we doing today? How we doing today? Probably should have done all this before I got on live, but you know. How's everybody doing today? I wanted to just jump on here today. Take that off. Just do some good old nerdy, some good nerdy book talk if we can. If y'all don't mind. Oh, and an update. I did find my book that was missing all day today. I did find it. What I believe happened is that my wife knew that I was on the case of her stealing my book. And she looked at my stories or whatnot. And she realized that I was on the case, that I was going to find out. Excuse me, I'm sorry. She knew I was on the case, I was going to find out if she took my book. So what she did was, she very stealthily snuck and put my book on the side of my bed. I think that's what happened. That's what I'm going to go with. I think she, tried to sneak out of me cracking the case. Because I was on the case, man. But what I'm reading right now is Ernest Gaines, A Lesson Before Dying. I just started reading it a few days ago. So that's the book I'm on right now. But what I want to talk about is when, like I told people yesterday, is that I had a vending event Sunday. And somebody at the event said, well, why, because I talk a lot about books, right? I start getting kind of passionate when I talk about it. And he said, why are you so passionate about books and about reading? And I said, because I believe in the power of books. I believe in I don't know what I'm looking for, but the power of books and how it can transform us, right? The transformative power of books. That's the word I'm looking for right there. I believe that, I can say books change lives because it changed mine. So I wanted to show a few books that have really helped me on my journey. And I believe there's no really change without study, right? I believe that you can have the best intentions in the world. You could want to be a better person. But if you don't have the tools and the knowledge of how to go about doing that, I think that then it's somewhat futile, or it's not futile, but it's a lot harder to do if you do not study, right? You don't go back and you start to read about what it is you're trying to do, right? And you don't kind of learn it a little bit better. Let me wipe my phone off so I'm in trouble for having a dirty phone. But I believe that without studying and without intentional study, a lot of change and a lot of success is really hard to attain in this life, right? So I wanted to show a few books that have really helped me. By no means am I a finished project or a success story yet. By no means. I'm just somebody who has, I think, kind of just started on my journey, right? And just some books that have really helped me out in that. So I have a little stack right here next to me. If anybody wants to join on and talk about, some of the power of books in their lives and their life, and some books that have helped them out, by all means, please do. And also go ahead and start talking. So now, one book that I don't have with me because I gave it away, I gave it to a friend, is Monster. I talk about Monster all the time, by Cody Scott. So the book Monster came out in the 90s, and a little short story for you. I was in middle school, I believe, when it came out, and I had an ordered mentor, right? I was not always this book savvy, or I was not always, if you ask people from my schools, in my high school, in my middle school, and grade school, they wouldn't tell you that I would be a bookstore owner when I got older. Let's just say that, right? I was who I was, and I was involved in what I was involved in. And I had an ordered mentor that had to come to school to speak to me about the ways that I should act. Let's just say it like that, right? He came and he spoke to me about the benefits of looking at the world the way that he looks at the world, taking school seriously, not getting in trouble, things of that nature. Things, and he had all right intentions. When I was that age, I was not in a place where I wanted to listen to any of it, right? And so when he came to my school, he was this real, big, stocky, big nigga, right? And he came to my school to talk to me about ways that I could change my life and how I should think and how I should view the world. I took a look at him, saw his clothes, and listened to him speak maybe 2 words, and I heard the way he spoke, and I immediately disregarded him, right? I immediately treated him, and that was the wrong thing for me to do. No question about that. I was completely in the wrong, but I just was not in a place where he could tell me anything, right? I looked at him like somebody who couldn't tell me nothing. He couldn't tell me anything because he didn't understand the world that I was coming from, the world that I lived in. He didn't understand the reason why I thought the way I thought, and the reason why I did some of the things that I was doing. So when he's tried to say, hey, Tyree, your teachers tell me you're a really bright young man, and that you can do so much better with yourself. You can be a leader and things like that. They tell me that you have all these different positive attributes to yourself. I just immediately disregarded him, told him shut up, leave me alone, and really didn't see him anymore. I mean, I would sit down and listen to him because I said it was ordered, but it was nothing he said could penetrate my conscience at all. And then I came across the book Monster. My brother was reading the book, and he's my hero, so he was reading, and anything he was doing was cool to me. So I said, well, let me read this book too. And that book really started the slow process of changing my consciousness, because I could read a book from somebody who understood, who understood the environment that I was involved in, and understood, and spoke to the in detail about the realities of a lot of things. And he spoke about, he spoke in a tone of a non-judgmental tone, which is so important when you're talking to young people. He spoke from an understanding stance, right? He said, this is what I did. Let me tell you everything I've done so I can let you know that I know about what I'm talking about. Now, let me tell you why what I did was not right. But also, let me explain to you why this is a system that's designed for me to do what I did. So by him doing that and by him taking that stance, it was so non-judgmental, because he said, I understand what you're doing. I understand who you look up to, and what makes you think the way you think. And I want you to know, A, that it's wrong, but I want you to know why is a system designed for you to think like that. And I had never read somebody speak so intelligently and so, like I said, non-judgmental and so open about his reality and about his imagination, right? Imagination is revolutionary. So he spoke in the way that he would always speak about, Black people being free and being able to do whatever we want to do if we were able to put together these different changes and attack these systems, right? And so that book really opened me up to just the amount of intelligence that I aspired to. Before, I was always a pretty intelligent kid, but I would hide it. You know what I mean? I would hide it. I was a kid. I would do my homework and throw it away. No lie, because I would do it because I wanted to do it, but I would throw it away because I didn't want people to look at me like a nerd. I'd know the answer in class and refuse to raise my hand. But what he spoke so openly and so intelligently, he wanted you to know he was an intelligent man. So that book really stuck with me throughout my years of my growing up. Like I said, I was in middle school. I ended up reading the whole book when I was maybe in the 8th, 9th grade. And it just really helped me out, really helped me out. So Monster Kody is probably the first book that just really changed my consciousness. Before that, I was just reading, like I said, I was in middle school. So I was just reading any kind of, fiction book that they put in front of me. So that's one book that I can say really, really changed my world. Another book that I don't have with me, there's a couple of books I don't have with me for a few different reasons that helped me out a lot, is Revolutionary Suicide by Dr. Huey P. Newton. Now, Revolutionary Suicide, I read that when I was an adult. And what he speaks about is how action is revolutionary, right? He named it Revolutionary Suicide because he said that there's a reactionary and then there's, revolutionary thinking. And reactionary is you just responding to things. And if you are in a reactionary state, you cannot really move forward because you're always defending yourself. You're always responding to an attack. You know what I mean? So you're pretty much always on defense. You're always blocking. And when you're revolutionary, you're on action, right? You're going forward. You are fighting against these systems. And so Dr. Huey P. Newton book really, it really inspired me because one thing Dr. Huey P. Newton always spoke about is that he went straight to the brothers on the corner, right? He had two brothers. One was very big time student, a scholar, very intelligent. Then he had another brother that was into the street. And he looked up to both of them. He took inspiration from both of them. And then when he was in college and he joined a black collective that was only concerned with what he calls bourgeoisie way of thinking. And they were only concerned with, other college students needs to go forward. And he noticed that, and it turned him off to that collective because he was like, what about the brothers on the corner? They're no different. The brothers on the corner need revolutionary too. They need help as well. We are ignoring them. And that really just put into my mind that we all have a place and a job in this fight, right? And that we can't ignore the brothers. And he didn't believe in a hierarchy, right? He didn't believe that he didn't look down on anybody. Is one thing that he really spoke about, is that just because, a brother is in the street and is doing certain illegal activities, now within reason, of course, we're not talking about, we know we're not talking about all the way that way, but we're talking about somebody that could be involved in street activity. Just because they're doing that does not mean that they're a bad person. Does not mean that they are to be left back in the revolutionary, right? In the revolution. When you're fighting for freedom, you're fighting for that brother that sells what he sells on the corner. And you're fighting for that brother that, graduated from medical school as well. I'm sorry, I got something in my eye right now. And another thing is that he spoke about how, the Black Book Club was birthed. The Black Panther Party was birthed as a book club. They would meet up and they would talk about different books. And that's how they became the Black Panther Party. So that book just really showed me that, studying is necessary and is monumental. And also not to forget where you come from, not to forget other people, right? There's no higher up, lower down. We're all horizontal in this thing. And you got to remember that, And so that's another book that really, really changed my consciousness and changed the way I thought about things. And another thing that really stood out to me is that he disagreed with Stokely Carmichael. And he still spoke very, very highly of him, right? They disagreed on one small principle. But he still spoke highly of him in the book. And that stood out to me because it shows a love for your people, right? You can disagree. Are you truly loving your people if you disagree and then you just disregard them, right? Are you truly a loyal person if you can just have a disagreement with somebody and then start talking bad about them? So that also stood out to me as well. Now, of course, Dr. Huey was not without his faults. But that book, Revolutionary Suicide, really changed how I go about my day-to-day and and my intent on studying, right? That's one thing that really stood out to me. Excuse me, I'm sleepy. I don't sleep much. Another book that really hit me is A Taste of Power. I'm going to go through the ones that I don't have first, and then I'll show the ones I have. Taste of Power by Elaine Brown. Now, Elaine Brown was the captain of the Black Panther Party when Dr. Huey went to jail. And she led the Black Panther Party to heights that they hadn't been to before. You know, one thing that she did was that she was in the process of instituting a school, right? Like a legitimate high school for Black kids in Oakland. Another thing that she was really instrumental in is a lot of the outreach programs that were in place. You know, the free breakfast program, she was instrumental in that. Also, she was very, very much involved in bringing women into the Black Panther Party and changing a lot of the sexist ideals that the men that came into the Black Panther Party had, right? And she was involved in getting a lot of them kicked out or disciplined. Now, she was not able to, and it wasn't her job to, don't get me wrong, she was not able to get all of it out, right? But she was very, very, very powerful in creating a different atmosphere within the Black Panther Party when she was leading them. And one thing that hit me is that in that book, A Taste of Power, Elaine Brown speaks to the fact that she was not born a quote unquote revolutionary, right? Elaine Brown speaks about how when she was younger, she was ashamed of her color, and she was not as entrenched in the Black experience when she was younger. And then she met another Black woman, and that changed her life. So that spoke to like really just, you know, we all come from a different background, right? And you can still educate yourself and research yourself into a revolutionary, right? Not to judge somebody's background as harshly. And Elaine Brown really spoke to that, right? She was so open about her background and her, you know, her different mistakes that she made while being a revolutionary, you know, and the different, like, you know, her love life. She spoke openly about that. And, you know, that book hit me a lot because it was like, it really made me check my, at the time, judgmental tone when it comes to women and their sexuality, right? Because here's this woman who you have to have an immense amount of respect for, and she's telling you that she dated this man, and it sounds so stupid me saying it now, right? Because I completely understand it now, and I'm ashamed of the judgmental way that I was. But you know, she talks about her dating numerous men, and the patriarchal mind makes you judge a woman, which is so stupid. That's why it's hard for me to explain it now. It's so stupid. But the patriarchal mind makes you judge or tells you that you are capable and you are within your rights to judge a woman based on, yes, A Taste of Power, that you're within your right to judge a woman based on something as stupid as that, right? But so that book just made me really burn that way of thinking out of my brain, because, you know, you have to have respect for Elaine Brown. She's the greatest. And also, she was able to present her autobiography. One thing that I think she really was intentional on is that she spoke about her mistakes, and she spoke about different people's mistakes. You know, she spoke about Dr. Huey's mistakes so that you can humanize more these revolutionary icons, right? One thing Dr. Huey says, the internal misogyny is real for us women too. Exactly, because, you know, we're raised in this patriarchal society that tells you have to have this misogyny is the way to go, and this is the natural way of things, and it's not, you know. And Huey talks about how as a revolutionary, they try to distance you from being a human. You know, they called Dr. Huey a madman, and they said they do that so that you think they're crazy, and that you don't have sympathy for them because you think they're insane. And also what that does is that makes you incapable of judging them not judging them, but looking at them honestly, right, and seeing the mistakes that have been made, because they're human. You see what I mean? And every human makes a mistake. So Elaine Brown speaks to that so well and so passionately. And, you know, it's just a beautiful book that I recommend anybody that I come across. That's why I don't have it now, because I gave it to somebody. It really changed your life when you read that, A Taste of Power. It's an amazing autobiography. Another book that I read right after A Taste of Power is the one, Assata, an autobiography. Now you can see it's all bent up because I've read this about two or three times. This is the one right here. This is, you know, everybody knows Assata's name, but not as many people have read her autobiography. And this is another book that, you know, she speaks to just her upbringing, and she speaks to her huge amount of love, right? She speaks about how a revolutionary is a lover first, and they love, and as a revolutionary, you have to love your people. You know, you're not an insane person. You are a person who believes in the power of love, and you also believe in self-defense. And Assata speaks about just the things that she was up against, you know, the different frame jobs that were put against her as a revolutionary. You know what I mean? Like, imagine this is a woman that's sent to an all-male prison. This is a woman that is sent to a prison full of nothing but racists. They're begging people to kill this woman, right? They are like literally begging them. They're sending her to jails where there are no black people, and they're begging her to be killed. And the strength that she poses. And then one part that sticks out to me on the Assata autobiography is when she talks about how when she decided to break out of jail and to go to Cuba. And it's because of her child crying and being tired of being in a fight that her child didn't sign up for. You know, she's in a prison visit, and she's telling her child, you know, hey, I think I'll be out soon, or, you know, we just have to keep up this fight. And her daughter's just crying because her daughter's like, I can't deal with this anymore. Like, her daughter's like, I didn't sign up to be in this war. I'm just born into this. And it speaks to that humanity and that love. She said her daughter couldn't deal with another year of her mom being in chains. Her daughter couldn't deal with another Sunday of her being in chains. That's when she decided, I gotta go. Right. And again, that just kind of further humanizes our heroes. You know, I think over the years, sometimes we look at these people like strong figures and strong icons, but we don't look at them as humans a lot of times. And we don't study them as much as we should. You know, after I read the Dr. Huey P. Newton autobiography, I remember I would get so enraged when I would hear people be homophobic, and then they would use his picture, right? You would see these people who their avies or their profile pictures would be Dr. Huey P. Newton, and then they'd spew this homophobic rhetoric. And it's like, well, you don't even study the person you claim to look up to, because Dr. Huey was so far against being a homophobic person, right? Malcolm X was so against homophobia. And I just remember being so upset because I'm like, we have to study these people. We can't just take a picture of them and throw them up on somewhere and say, okay, that's who I look up to, and we don't study that person. So the Assata book also put me in that mode. Another book that I don't have with me, but is an amazing autobiography and is less known, is a book called Panther Baby. And Panther Baby by, I think it's Dr. Joseph. I'll get his full name, but Panther Baby is a book from a young man who, he was a teenager when he joined the Black Panther Party in New York. And he was actually in the Black Panther Party with Tupac's mom. And he was in the Panther 21 with Tupac's mom. And when he was 17, he was charged with domestic terrorism. They said that him and 20 other members of the Black Panther Party conspired to blow up a newspaper office, and they were looking at about 265 years in prison. And he speaks about, them having these secret meetings in the courthouse, and Tupac's mother being such a strong woman and deciding that she's going to defend herself, and then him getting out of jail, and the toll that it took on him being in jail. He ended up being addicted to drugs because he didn't know how to function. Right? He left jail. He's still like 19, 20 years old, and he doesn't know what to do because there's a certain part of his life that he wasn't in the Black Panther Party. Then about 2 years he was in the Black Panther Party. That got him thrown in jail. So he's rebelling against the Black Panther Party because he wants to get his life back. And in the midst of doing that, he becomes addicted to drugs, and he starts robbing people. And then he gets thrown back in jail. And then he has to come to grips with, again, himself, and says, who am I? Am I this person who has been addicted to these drugs? Or am I this person that was a Black Panther? And then he realized, exactly who he was. And then he got out of jail again. And he had so many ups and downs, right? He had so many pitfalls in his path to consciousness. And that book just showed me that there's no straight line, right? He speaks about there's no just straight path. There's no one day I was this, and then I woke up, and I'm a revolutionary, and I never looked back again in my life. That doesn't happen, right? We're people, we're human. So it just speaks about, forgiveness and forgiving yourself, but still getting back on your track, right? Getting back on your movement, back on your pivot. So he had to get back up a lot of times. He fell down a lot, but he had to get back up, and he speaks about that. So Panther Baby is another book that I would suggest to anybody looking for a good read. Anybody. Another one that I actually was lucky enough to interview this author is a book called Yes, We're Haitian by Alan. I always mess his name up. Alan Patron. He's an author in New York City. Really, really good brother. Young brother. And I remember I met Al when I was on Twitter. I used to be on Twitter like really just wilding when I was, in my 20s, and I was just on there just talking crazy. And he was one of the first ones that I saw because, before social media blew up, you just knew people in your circle. And he was all the way in New York. I was in Southern Georgia. And he was one of the first people that knew a balance, right? He knew a strict balance. He was an intelligent brother that would talk about the crazy topics, but he'd get back to talking about some sensical topics as well, right? He would joke around about the Knicks. They're terrible, by the way, if he's watching. I'll pin his name. He's on Instagram. Let me see if I can. Let me see. Yep. So that's him right there, Alan. But he was one of the first ones that would walk that thin line, right? He knew who he was fully. He knew he was an intelligent black man, and he knew that as an intelligent black man, and he was, from my age range, so my cultures. He talked about the Martin Show. He talked about Wu-Tang Clan. He talked about, Biggie Smalls, the genius of Jay-Z. And then he talked about, Haitian Revolution and capitalism and things like that. So he was one of the first ones that I saw was an author that, was my age and spoke the way I speak. You know what I mean? And he wrote a book called Yes, We're Haitian. And it's a fiction story about a young man going back home to where they're from in Haiti. But just him being an author changed how I look at things, because I would always say, I read books and everything, but I would either not talk about them that much, or I didn't look at the possibilities of me being my age and talking the way I talk and listening to Biggie Smalls all day, being somebody that could sit up here and talk to you all about books, right? I didn't believe it at that time, but he was one of the first ones that I saw do it. So that really changed my outlook on life and on how we can navigate this world. Right. So I always tell him, Alan's one of my favorite authors, and this is one of my favorite books that he's written. He's written about He's written at least 8 or 9 books. I have a couple other ones that he's written, but this is the first one that I read that I really enjoyed. I did an interview with him on Quality Time. He actually was the first, was one of or the first author that I interviewed on Quality Time. I was just talking to him, the pandemic had just hit, and he was like, man, I had this whole tour planned out that I was going to go on to these different HBCUs where I could talk to them about my book, but now because of the pandemic, I can't do it. I said, well, let's just talk on Instagram, and boom, you know what I mean? And that's where the idea spawned from, and then we were able to chop it up on IG Live about his book. So he's one of the first people who were on Quality Time that I was able to interview. Another book that really impacted me is A Long Way Gone. And this is by Ishmael Bey. All right, I'll put him in here too. Now, this book, let me make sure I do it right. Let me make sure I do it. I'm supposed to do it here. All right, there we go. So, A Long Way Gone by Ishmael Bey. This is a Memoirs of a Boy Soldier. I did a quick video on this before, but this video just kind of changed my mind on the worldwide revolution. You know, how interconnected we are. He writes about how he was kidnapped at 12 years old and forced into a civil war in Africa. And he talks about the brainwashing that goes into effect. And, you know, I relate that story to a lot of the horizontal violence that we have here in America, where, you know, as far as gang violence, to the brainwashing that goes into effect, right? The strongest aspect of the brainwashing that happens is the pursuit of love and the pursuit of compassion, and the pursuit of understanding, right? As children, we want somebody to tell us that they love us. We want somebody to tell us that they'll protect us. And once we achieve that, we want somebody to tell us that our life matters. And once we get that, whether that be the right way or the wrong way, we will defend that to tooth and nail. We'll defend that even if it's a false sense of family or false sense of safety, we'll defend it as much as we can, right? And we'll do whatever we have to do to defend it. And even becoming a child soldier, that's the first thing that they told him while brainwashing him, that we're the only ones that can protect you. We're the only ones that really love you. They hate you. They want to kill your family. We are your salvation. We are your family. We are the ones that love you. So when he gave him that information, when they gave him that message, they started to defend that, right? At 12 and 13, they started to do whatever they had to do, kill or die, to defend somebody who has brainwashed them into thinking that they love them. And a lot of times this happens in stateside when it comes to gang violence, right? This book is called A Long Way Gone, Memoirs of a Boy Soldier. You know, a lot of times we sit back and we say, man, how can a 14-year-old kid in Chicago be so violent and willing to die and willing to kill to defend a neighborhood that they don't own, or to defend has this 15-year-old in LA capable of killing to defend a color. And it sounds so asinine, but really they're defending a sense of family, right? They're defending what they perceive to be love. They're defending what they perceive to be their sense of safety. You know, these people who wear the same color that they do, they look at them as family, right? And a lot of these kids come from broken homes, and some of these people on the corner are the first one to tell them that they matter. You know what I mean? When I was young, and any older male that would tell me to do something, that would tell me to do something to defend something that I've been told I should believe in, I was willing to do it. Of course, with under reason, of course. But if they say, hey, you got to fight somebody because I tell you to. All right, cool. You know what I mean? And it's a brainwashing thing that comes into effect. So, Memoirs of a Boy Soldier, he talks about that. He talks about how he was so deep into the process of being brainwashed and so deep into this war that when they were rescued from the war, he didn't want to go, right? He wanted to kill the people who wanted to take him out of the war, because he's like, this is all I do. This is what I am. I'm a child soldier. If you take this away from me, I don't know what I am, right? I don't know who I am if I'm not somebody who wakes up, because this is what I'm doing every day. I'm killing every day, or I'm aspiring to kill every day. And this person who I look to as a father figure, I look to as my savior, is applauding me when I carry these acts of violence out. So if you take that away from me, I'm afraid that I have nothing. I'm nobody. You know what I mean? And that just really woke me up a lot to just the world as we know it. You know what I mean? The struggle is so much bigger than just the American South, which I'm used to, or the Midwest, or it's a worldwide thing. So A Long Way Gone showed me that. So again, A Long Way Gone, Memoirs of a Boy Soldier. I'm country, so pronouncing memoirs is difficult for your boy. Another book that hit me when I read it. A lot of times I take a lot of inspiration from autobiographies. A lot of people know that's my favorite genre is autobiographies. So that's primarily what I'm highlighting right now. Another book that hit me is Common, Let Love Have the Last Word. Another memoir. And what he talks about is, him thinking he had it figured out and learning from his daughter, that he had to self-reflect and that he didn't have the answers, and that he had to make some changes in the way that he thought about the word love, and how the way he thought about the words loyalty, and how he thought about how he was living his life, right? He thought he was a good guy. He's like, well, I don't do A, B, and C, so I'm a good guy. I'm a good person. Celebrate me. I'm a good person. I'm looked at as this conscious rapper. So I got to be a good person. I don't talk about shooting people. And his daughter had to, he got into a little argument with his daughter in the beginning of the book, and she kind of just checked him, right? Reality just checked him at one moment. And that's when he had to just try to figure things out. And what I took from that is the power of self-reflection, of honest self-reflection, right? Is that we have to be honest with ourselves on our shortcomings, on things that no longer suit us, right? Some ways of thinking helped us in certain stages of our life, but don't help us anymore. They don't help us grow, right? So we have to let them go. And a lot of my old way of thinking just no longer agrees with the path that I'm on now. So you have to be able to shed those ways. And you won't be able to shed them if you don't notice that they're a problem. You know what I mean? So the power of self-reflection is what I took from Let Love Have the Last Word by Common. Common's a rapper that I was always a big fan of. I'm from Indiana, right next to Chicago. So, hearing somebody that I respected and I looked at as a good guy, right? He's like I said, he's a conscious rapper. He's a good guy. And him saying, hey, man, I don't got the answers. I've hurt people, and the way that I've thought has hurt people, and I need to fix this, it is really powerful. And so the power of self-reflection is what I took from Let Love Have the Last Word by Common. Show you the cover again here. Another book. Oh, Ready for Revolution by Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture. Now, this is another autobiography. And as you see, I'm not done with it yet. I just want to talk about the power of this book. And what I took from this book, because like I said, I'm not done with it yet, is the amazing detail that Stokely Carmichael talks about his childhood. And it made me have to be honest about what I'm doing as a father, right? Because I think a lot of times we think that our child either doesn't notice something or won't remember something. Oh, they're so young, they won't remember that, da da da. But hear him talk about, he knows how many steps were in his old house that he left when he was 11. He remembers how the porch smelled, right? He remembers how his father spoke to his mother. He remembers how his aunt spoke to his mother. And he remembered what his dad did when his aunt, or did not do, right? When his aunt spoke to his mother a certain way. And hearing that was really kind of just hit me. It's like, wow, he was 6, 7 years old, and he can speak in beautiful detail. And this was at a time that he was going through having cancer, and he can speak in beautiful detail about, a regular day. His dad come home from work, and what dinner's on the table at the time. And another book that hit me like that is Nigger by I'm be in trouble because I forgot my man's name. But the book Nigger by Dick Gregory. I'm so sorry, Ancestor Gregory. Book Nigger by Dick Gregory. He talks about that as well. How his mom felt in certain random Thursdays. Hearing his mom crying in a certain day because his dad did something, and hearing his dad argue with his mom, and seeing how they acted the next day, how he treated her, and how he could pick up on the fact that his dad did not respect his mom. His dad didn't respect him just because of the way that he talked to him. And it's amazing that somebody can be so detailed in their memory, so that just made me just really be more intentional on showing my sons things, like when I come home from work, or now that I work from home, just how I come out of work, and how I speak to random people on the street. You know what I mean? How I try to speak to everybody with a level of respect, because I know they're watching, and I know they'll remember it, right? I know when my child is 17, 18 years old, he's going to remember how his dad talked to his mom when he was 6. You know what I mean? He'll remember how his dad talked to a cashier. You know what I mean? When he gets 20 years old and a cashier gets on his nerves, he'll reflect back to how his dad talked to a cashier when he was 10. So another self-reflection, and just knowing that we are always being watched. And the fact that as black men in a community, we are, as black men in the community, we are put into a position of a role model, just because, right? Just from our existence in a community space, because of the amazing, numbers of our brothers that are in prison, and our brothers that are no longer here for a litany of reasons, right? And from us just being in a community, in any community, you are somebody that people look up to, right? You are a role model, whether you want to be or not. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Stokely talks about how his dad would speak to people on the street. And Dick Gregory talked about how his dad would talk to people at the bar, and the way people respected his father. Malcolm X talks about how his father would speak to people all the time. you know, and how and what his father would do on a day-to-day basis. And you think about the fact that just from being in a community, you know, there's kids up the street from you whose father is not in the home on a day-to-day basis for a number of reasons, right? Could be their fault, could not be their fault. That's really not our job to figure out. But just from you coming outside, whether you have children or not, right? You coming outside and there's somebody younger than you that notices you and they look at you as what an older black man does. You see what I mean? So it makes you be intentional, and it's very, very, it's a lot of pressure, but you know, black women have more, so we got to figure it out, and we got to travel through this space as intentional and as positively as we can, so that the younger generation can see the good things, you know, and it's I'm a work in progress. Trust me on that. You know what I mean? But books like Ready for Revolution and Nigger by Dick Gregory just really further drill that into my mind. You know what I mean? Further drill that into my mind to understand the cost of being just a black man that is lucky enough to be in the community, right? Is lucky enough to be cognizant in the community. Is lucky enough to be free and to be alive. So we have a responsibility. Alan, what's going on, brother? We just talked about your amazing book, Yes, We're Haitian. We spoke about that earlier, and just, you know, I got to thank you and give you your, yes, Ready for Revolution, Stokely Carmichael. The Life and Struggles of Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture. You know, Al, I got to give you your props for being like, and I don't even know if you know the amount of inspiration that you gave me, right? From the days of Twitter, when we used to just be wilding out on Twitter, and you always spoke so intelligently, and you always spoke with a sense of responsibility. It's one thing I always noticed about you, right? Even when we were wilding out and, you know, just absorbing this new social media thing and speaking like young 19, 20, 22-year-olds, just blurting out things that we had no business blurting out. But you always had a sense of responsibility, right? I remember you'd be like, okay, now we going too far now, right? And you had the kind of the nerve to do that. You know what I'm saying? To say, all right, y'all tripping now. And I always respected that, and I appreciate that. And then when I found out you were an author, you know, you being an author just kind of changed the way I thought about how I could be in this literary space. You know what I mean? Because you're somebody that can quote any Jay-Z line, any Biggie line, and you're also an author, and that made it real for me that I can be somebody that is myself and, you know, walking that line between being who I am fully as well as being in this literary space. Before I was like, man, nobody can listen to no country nigga from Americus, Georgia talk about books. And I would always think I gotta, you know, speak all these big SAT words to look intelligent. And you were solid in who you were. And you were like, hey, this is me. And I'm intelligent, this is me. You know, and I listen to Wu-Tang Clan all day. And I listen to Nas and Biggie and this, that, and the third. And I'm intelligent. And you're not gonna play with my intelligence at all. You know, so I appreciate that, and you know, that's something I always look to you and appreciate a lot. Have you read Intro into an Afrocentric Worldview by Linda James Meyer? No, I haven't. That sounds like a book that I really need to look into. And I will now that you suggested, I definitely will. And I appreciate it. Anybody who has books that they suggest, please, by all means, write it in here. Join me to talk about the book that you read that you enjoyed. We're talking about different books that we've read in our life that has changed our way of thinking. And it's kind of just changed, you know, in our journey to consciousness, books that have helped us out. Of course, there's, you know, the autobiography of Malcolm X. You know, I can't not list that as well, because he speaks it's Autobiography of Malcolm X. You all have read Autobiography of Malcolm X. The Greatest by Muhammad Ali. It was his 1972, I believe, 72 autobiography. The 16th Round by Hurricane Carter. That's another book that is just amazing. I watched the movie with Denzel, and all props to Denzel. He portrayed that role well. One thing that they really, really cut down on in the movie is the high level of intelligence that Hurricane Carter had. That in his autobiography, he speaks to it, right? His intelligence jumps right off the page. I think in the movie, somewhat, you can kind of take it how you want. It's somewhat just presented like he was just fighting his way out of jail. And really, he was thinking his way out, because he was so intelligent, and he was such an activist. Even when he was boxing, he was such a revolutionary. Even when he was out in the world and he was a boxer, right? He was always one person that was on point. So I would suggest that book as well, 16th Round by Hurricane Carter. That's that Chris Emdin Ratchetdemic spirit. I've heard that before. Please read I Write What I Like. Steve Biko is amazing. All About Love, definitely. I'm reading all the message here. Message to Black Men in America. Amazing book as well. Another book that changed my outlook is Song of Solomon by Toni Morrison. Now, this is a fiction book. This is the only two fiction books that I have on my list right now. Yes'Ra Haitian and Song of Solomon. Now, Song of Solomon by Toni Morrison is such a powerful book because you look at the time that this book came out. And Toni Morrison having the flat out audacity to write a book in that time about black people extracting revenge for senseless violence against us. She speaks about a collective. This book is focusing on a collective of people that anytime a black person would be killed at the hands of a white person. Oh, the other is Yes'Ra Haitian by Alan Patrone. Amazing book, an amazing guy, amazing author. She speaks about whenever a black person is lynched, by the hands of a white person, this collective that call themselves the Numbers, they would just go out and they would just kill a white person, right? I'm not saying it's right. I'm speaking to. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm speaking to the strength of the how revolutionary imagination is, that she could write a book like this about black pain and about black rage, right? She speaks about how everybody in this book is going through black rage in one form or another, right? If it's from the main character's father, who his black rage makes him assimilate to white culture, right? Made him just focus on making as much money as he could because he thought that could buy his way out of that black rage. It speaks to the main character who just went about life as just kind of putting his head in the dirt and ignoring it to try to stay sane, right? He's trying to, by ignoring all of these atrocities that are against black people, he's just trying to stay sane, right? He's just trying to go the next day, the next day, and the next day. He's not trying to dig too far into it because he understands that he doesn't know what that will lead him to. Then his best friend is his black rage and his black pain made him extract physical revenge and physical violence against people, right? He joined this collective that started to just attack the system with straight violence. So it just speaks about everybody's different reaction to black pain, to their black rage, and how each of them are just trying to figure it out the best way they can. You know what I mean? And the main character trying to go back to see where he's from and to just see where it all started for him is an amazing story. And Song of Solomon, it came out. Let's see what we got here. So the first Plum printing, so I don't know, is 87. It came out before that though. But just the power to write a book about Black rage and about what Black rage has the ability to look like at that time is really strong. Toni Morrison is my favorite author because she's Toni Morrison. She's the best. Another book that I have, but I just don't have it in front of me right now, that is an amazing book, is Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. Another fiction book. That book just speaks to the journey, right? The journey of a coming of age story of a Black woman in Their Eyes Were Watching God, and it speaks to the dangers of attaching it speaks to the dangers of a Black woman attaching her self-worth and of her life to a man, right? It speaks to how dangerous that can be and how costly it can be, when you do that. The Spook Who Sat by the Door, an amazing book. And, since you bring up The Spook Who Sat by the Door, let me see the best way to say this. The Spook Who Sat by the Door, I think a lot of people set out mentally to be the spook who sat by the door, right? And then what happens is they get blinded when they get into these establishments, and they no longer are sitting by the door with the same reasons that they came into the building with, right? They get blinded by those lights, lights and the cameras and the glitz, and then they end up turning it back to the door, right? I think that happens a lot. I think that happened to, I believe that happened to Kanye. I think that he had certain intentions, and then when he started to go up in the world, he started to assimilate more and more into the world that he was trying to kind of go against, and then it swallowed him whole. The Spook Who Sat by the Door in the book, he goes crazy because you're having to walk in these two worlds, and you're having to remember as you go up into the world that you're trying to destroy. You have to remember that you're trying to destroy it, right? But you still have to rise up in it to destroy it. So you're having to assimilate so much and put this mask on so much, you get so good at it that you don't know how to take it off. It becomes part of your skin. It blends into your skin so much you can't see where the mask ends and your skin begins, right? I think a lot of times, like the movie Deep Cover, I read somewhere that the person who wrote that script looked into Spook Who Sat by the Door a lot for some of the storylines, because on Deep Cover he became a criminal. You know what I mean? Lawrence Fishburne, on a classic movie, he became a criminal. He started to like it, right? He started to like the way people looked at him, and he became addicted to the life, and he forgot that this is what he's trying to take down. I think that's what happened to some of our famous folk. The Coming by Daniel Black, I have not read that. But Miss Jenny, any suggestion from you is golden to me, so I'll definitely look into that. let me see. Another book that is an amazing book to me is Live from Death Row, written by Mumia Abu-Jamal. Free Mumia, by the way. I just saw that in the news update about Mumia's case is that one of the star witnesses was actually paid off by a DA. They recently found that out. So, free Mumia. Live from Death Row by Mumia Abu-Jamal is an amazing book. Mumia is an amazing deep thinker. And he wrote this book, like it says, he wrote this book while he's on death row. And but aside from the amazing vantage points that he writes with, aside from all of the information that you can attain from reading this book, it speaks to how you just you can avoid letting your surroundings control you, right? You can avoid letting your surroundings swallow you whole, because he wrote this book on death row. You know what I mean? And he can easily just succumb to the environment of death row and not let his brain, not let his mind grow, and not let his life continue, because you're on death row. They're giving you a date you'll die. You know what I mean? They're saying you'll be here until the day you die. So it's easy just to lay down and let yourself, die from within. But he continues to read and continues to be a scholar and write these books from a place as dangerous and as desolate as death row, right? And he's writing off of blind faith. You know what I mean? He's like, maybe this book will reach a Tyree in Harvest, Alabama, and then one day he'll get on live and he'll talk about. Of course, he's not aiming for that, but what I'm saying is he has a faith that this book will reach somebody and that it will change somebody, and then that person will talk about the book to somebody else and it'll change somebody else. So his belief in people and his belief in his intelligence is what I take from this book a lot, is that you can't let your surroundings engulf you, and don't let them take control of you. I spoke about the book Monster. This is the book he wrote after that, which is Stand Up, Struggle Forward. By formerly known as Monster Kody, but before he passed, it was Seneca Shakur. Fire Next Time by James Baldwin. Yes, James Baldwin is an amazing author. He's one of my favorite authors as well. Some of our greatest minds are behind bars right now. That is a fact. That is 100% fact. This book, Stand Up, Struggle Forward, he wrote this about 20 years after Monster came out. And, he says, LA was fine when I was shooting people. LA was fine when I was Monster Kody. LA was fine when I was selling drugs and using drugs. That was all good with LA. But when you become a revolutionary, you become a threat. And not to the institutional security of a prison, but to the institution of capitalism. And that's what's really cracking. So this book to me is an amazing kind of turn and of what reading can do for the mind and for the consciousness, because he continues on his level of consciousness that he shows on Monster. And then you just see how in the last, 20 years since the book came out, that he just continued studying, right? He continued studying, he continued reading with intent, he continued researching and thinking outside of his current situation. So this book just speaks to, I'd like killing me over here, but this book just kind of shows a full circle, so to me, it speaks to just the continued pursuit of knowledge and of consciousness. These books, they represent so much more than just the words that they deliver. They all have a really profound lesson that comes with them all. And I enjoy them. I pick them up, and I live through them, and I try to take those with me on a day to day. The lessons that come from the books, I just try to take them with me. Also, Vanguard, the advanced detachment of the African Revolution by Chairman Omali Yeshitela. I'm going to get in trouble for pronouncing his last name wrong. Again, I apologize because I am country. The political report to the 7th Congress of the African People's Socialist Party. Now, this book is kind of personal to me because when I got to Alabama, me and my wife, we wanted to join an organization of like-minded people. And we joined the Uhuru organization, and I joined a free public garden, right? And we went and we tilled this football field sized garden, and we put in a free community garden. A lot of people who follow me have seen that. And while we were tilling the land with me and my man Corbina, it was just two of us, and we had just hand tools. We would do it every Sunday, every Saturday and Sunday, 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock in the morning. And he would be out there listening to Chairman O'Malley speak. And then things came full circle to me because I was like, man, that voice sounds familiar. But we're listening to the lessons, we're listening to the information that he's given us. And I was like, man, that voice sounds familiar. And this is the voice from the Dead Prez Let's Get Free intro. Chairman speaks, and then there's another activist that speaks as well about the about the blade, right? Licks the blade, and the wolf licks the blade, and he keeps licking. He's tasting blood. He doesn't realize it's his own blood. He doesn't realize that he's cutting himself and he's killing himself. And the first Dead Prez album, Let's Get Free, was really monumental to me because my brother, my hero, he loved the album, so I loved it too. And when I put two and two together, I was like, wow. You know what I mean? Things, just the way kind of life goes, things come back to you. And then I just, started looking more and more into Chairman O'Malley and hearing him speak. So I picked up 2 books that he's written, and taking a lot of those lessons. But when I read Chairman O'Malley, I read it in his voice. I hear his voice. And I remember talking to my brother. And I was like, man, you won't believe, who's in an organization that I'm in. I said, man, Chairman O'Malley. He's like, who's that? I said, that's the person from the Dead Prez out. And it amazed him. So, when I read his books, I read them in his voice. And, Chairman O'Malley is somebody who we really respect. My wife actually painted a picture of Chairman O'Malley. So he's somebody who we really respect as well. So those are a couple of books. I probably listed maybe, 15, maybe 10, 15 books. So I have 10, and I listed at least 7 books that I don't have in front of me. So I probably listed about 17 books that I'm a big fan of, that I've taken lessons from and information from, and I've tried to implement them in my day-to-day life. So, and I've picked up some books from people here that I'm definitely going to look into and try to read. The ISIS Papers, a must read, is an amazing book from a historical scholar. The Coming by Daniel Black is another book I'll look into. The Spook Who Sat by the Door, I've read it, but I want to read it again. There's another book that somebody listed here. Oh yeah, Soledad Brother by George Jackson. George Jackson is someone that I looked into after I read Taste of Power by Elaine Brown. She spoke very highly of George Jackson. So I ended up reading about him as well. Message to the Black Man in America. I Write What I Like by Steve Biko. I have a Steve Biko book in the other room in there, but I don't think that's what the one that I have. So I'll have to look into that as well. book they got listed, but I can't see it right now. But yeah, so I hope everybody could pick up on the books that were listed here.